brothers and sisters, I want to welcome you to this special edition of the Methodist Connection. And it's tremendously an opportunity that we can be here and to be in the company of Reverend Richel Leather, who is joining us from Cheltenham, England, within the the Bristol District, the Bristol Methodist District, if I may call it quite correctly. Let me welcome you this day to this broadcast. Welcome to the show, Reverend Richel Leather. How is Cheltenham today?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's lovely to be here. It's a beautiful sunny day today. We're in the middle of something of a heat wave at the moment, so I love it. But I know some people are finding it quite hot.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's summer here as well. And the heat wave is on both sides of the Atlantic. It's quite a profound opportunity that we can have you with us. And we want to, on behalf of the entire team of the Methodist Connection, welcome you. This is a secret space. We want you to feel at home as a Methodist. Here on the other side of the Atlantic, we call it United Methodist Church. The British call it the Methodist Church. I was in England last year, and I struggled with that in between Peel, Bristol, Oxford, and every time when I utter a word and say the United Methodist Church, and we cross correct and say, we are Methodists. But to begin with, let's start the ball rolling with you today. Justice, equity, and inclusion are very important subject matters within our faith, within our denomination. I'm talking about the Methodist Church globally, but within the British context. As we begin this interview, please share with us what is an EDI officer in the Bristol District, or you may call it the Methodist District of Bristol. Talk to us as we begin for the benefit of those who are watching, those who are listening globally. Reverend Richel.
So let me take it back a couple of years. At our national conference several years ago, we agreed a new strategy on justice, dignity and solidarity. And really off the back of that, the recommendation was that all of the districts within the UK appointed an EDI officer. So EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion. And I was appointed as the Bristol District EDI officer. Some districts are fortunate enough to be able to pay their EDI officers. I squeeze this into my everyday ministry. So I've got 2 churches here in Cheltenham. So I do my best. And the underpinning part of this strategy is biblically based in that we are all uniquely made in the image of God. And so as an EDI officer, we're there to encourage the churches from within our districts to think about things like accessibility issues, and that's the full range of accessibility. So I think when you talk about EDI, some people will automatically latch on to maybe a sexuality issue or a disability issue, but it's a full spectrum of anything that provides a barrier for us to be fully included in the life of the church. And so I'm here to try and help provide some help and resources So churches might contact me and say, we are wanting to put on a particular service. So that might be a service which is dementia friendly. And I might not have particular expertise, but I'll certainly try and go and find out about that. And I'm very much encouraging people to do, we have mandatory training now for particular roles within the church where you have to take part in EDI training, and I'm there to really encourage everybody to undertake that training. So that's what an EDI officer is in a nutshell.
Okay, so talk to me a little, since this is our first time meeting on this platform. How did you come to this job as an EDI officer? I'm certainly sure there is a passion. I'm certainly sure you have experiences that the church within the Bristol District taught, felt, and are quite aware that you have the expertise, and it's quite important that bringing somebody into a conversation as it is around equality, diversity, and inclusion within the modern context. How did you come to this job? Where the passion comes from?
So I've been in ministry for about 8 years now, and prior to that, I worked as a manager for a charity in the UK. It was a charity called the Citizens Advice Bureau, and that's a charity that provides legal advice to anybody on a whole range of subjects. And I was involved in the training aspect of volunteers, and particularly to do with the Equality Act. So the Equality Act is a particular piece of legislation in the UK that aims to ensure that various categories of people who experience discrimination are provided with legal protection. So, for example, that older people should not be discriminated against in certain contexts, or that people of colour, Black people, are not discriminated against in, say, an employment context. And so I would train on that, and that I did that for about 17 years, and that very much gave me a really good grounding in becoming inclusive, in looking at where discrimination exists in public life and how to challenge that, and particularly when it comes to challenging things like that. So as an organisation, we might get a member of the public saying things like, I'm being denied welfare benefits, but if I was an immigrant, I'd be given them really, really easily. And as a representative of that charity, I would be obliged to challenge that particular narrative. And that was a really good grounding in many aspects of ministry, actually. But when I came into the church, the church does not exist in isolation, and I think we like to think of the church as being inclusive, but there are many aspects of discrimination that still exist within our church. It stubbornly continues, and I believe that it is part of my discipleship to challenge discrimination wherever I see it, to be open to be challenged myself. I don't always get my language right. I make mistakes, and I want people who experience discrimination to point those out to me so that I can do better in the future. Again, all within this context of being able to see Christ in everybody, to be able to encourage the flourishing of their discipleship. And I think because I've always been passionate about this, I had something of a reputation when I was at Ministerial Training College for being a bolshy feminist, and that was a badge I wore with honour. Coming into ministry, my colleagues would immediately notice when I would pick up on various aspects of language. So I think I gained something of a reputation of being that. Some people refer to it as being as a holy agitator, and I'm quite happy with that. And so when the chair of district phoned me up and said, "Rachel, we've got a gap in our staff team. Would you like to become the EDI officer?" It just seemed like a natural fit for me.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's quite interesting to see the background, where you've come from, where the passion is, and the subject matter around equality, around inclusion. It backdates to the very history of our church. John Wesley, open air preaching, preaching to miners in Peel, for instance, or at Haramount. That history is deeply rooted within Methodist context. And as you have indicated, I'm certainly sure theological debates exist from all spectrums of society. British society is no exception. Theological conservatives, theological centrists, theological liberals. How do you go about doing your job within the Bristol District, keeping in mind there's a deep history there that comes all the way from the likes of John Wesley and George Whitefield, making sure that the gospel itself is for everyone.
I mean, I think it's particularly visible in the Bristol district. So you may know some of the history of people such as Edward Colston. He was a slaver, and there was a controversial event that happened a couple of years ago when some people ripped down the statue of Edward Colston and threw it into the docks at Bristol. And various politicians came out and said this was an act of vandalism. And certainly within the Bristol Methodist District, we had a long conversation about how to acknowledge our history. How do we celebrate our history, but how do we hold that with honesty? So I don't know whether you've come across the Professor Anthony Reddy. He's a British Black Methodist theologian. I went to hear him speak recently, where he was talking about whiteness is the sea, not the shark. Where he talked very much about racism being embedded in our culture, and how we talk about about things like history, and he mentioned about reparations, about reparation not being about money, but about acknowledging first that those of us who are white benefit from the history of racism. Within a church context, I think trying to get people to understand the privilege in which we sit has been off the backs of those who have really suffered, when individuals will feel that they bear no responsibility for that. And so I think part of what a lot of us are trying to do is just open up that conversation and help people with self-awareness over particularly aspects of racism, to get people to understand when language is inappropriate, and language can be very damaging, and that to me is part of the embedded sin of the culture of the church, that the church is a toxic environment for some people when it comes to aspects of discrimination.
Well, those of you just joining us, we want to welcome you. This is the Methodist Connection. Here we discuss Methodism in its totality. We speak to experts, pastors, scholars, lay preachers, teachers of the gospel, civic leaders. And today it's a great privilege to have with us Reverend Richel Leather. She's joining us from Cheltenham, England, and she happens to be the EDI Officer. Is the EDI Officer for the Methodist, the Bristol Methodist District. I want to get that right. And she's with us today as we are in conversation around issues of equality, diversity, and inclusion. Change, Reverend Richel, is inevitable within the context of the Methodist tradition, especially, generational change. Dealing with the subject matter around equality, as you've just stated, diversity and inclusion, is a very challenging subject in many parts of the world. And we're speaking to you within the context of the United Kingdom. Talk to us as you go around these issues. You talk about the scholar Anthony. Did you say Reddy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's worth looking up.
Okay, I'm going to look that up, but I would also appreciate if you can send me some information. We love to have him here on the Methodist Connection as we debate some of these critical issues. The church has to change. The church must change. The church has that moral and equitable responsibility as enshrined within the gospel. When Jesus quite clearly delineate that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, that I have come to set the captives free. I have come to ensure that the oppressed are liberated within that particular context of Luke chapter 4. 18, it is truly significant in the sense that there's no possibility of doing theology without justice. There's no possibility of doing theology without inclusion. There's no possibility of doing theology without the amagodi, which emphasizes that we are all created in the image and the likeness of God. That is within the context of theology and in the Bible. So what is your experience for you within the context of Britain, within the context of Bristol? Bristol has a very unique history. The New Room sits there. John Wesley, remarkably within the religious context globally, is an icon. He's a great figure within our church. He played a pivotal role bringing this church to where it is today. But these are changing times, and things are shifting where the generation now is demanding more out of the church. How you go about doing this job, and I'm sure it's challenging between theological conservatives and those who are centrists, and also those who are moderates.
So I think you mentioned the New Room at Bristol, and the New Room is one of those Methodist churches that is licensed to conduct same-sex marriages, which is a marvelous thing in my view. And both of my churches in Cheltenham are also licensed. And I remember when the Methodist Conference voted in favour of same-sex marriage. We're going back about 4 years ago now. I've got two sons. They've just finished at university, so they were late teens at the time. And I remember telling them with great joy that the Methodist Church had taken this huge step to commit to same-sex marriage. And both of them looked at me as if I'd just wandered out of the ark. Because from their point of view, it was, I think, firstly, they were astonished that the church didn't already do that. And secondly, they felt that, why on earth was that a controversial debate? Because for them, it was it's so normal. And I think the issue of sexuality is something that we have latched onto in a church context, and that has very much been to our detriment. Another example, I was part of the Christians at Pride event in Cheltenham a couple of months ago, and I ended up in conversation with a young person who identified as non-binary. And he spotted my dog collar and sort of asked me in a very nice way, what are you doing here as a Christian? Why do you want to be part of this? And we had this conversation, and their response was, but I thought the church hated us. And unfortunately, I could not, hand on heart, tell them that they were wrong, given that there had been some vocal criticism of that Pride event from certain aspects of the church, and that deeply grieved me. That is still an issue. I think the flip side of that, certainly within the Bristol district, is that we have many churches who are part of the Welcome Refugees network in the UK. And churches are seeking to provide places of sanctuary, places of welcome for asylum seekers and refugees in our country, in a way that our communities are finding the issue of immigration to be incredibly controversial. And that is partly because of the narrative of certain politicians. I'm sure that is echoed in the United States as well. And as a church, so for example, we've hosted something called a World Kitchen event, where asylum seekers who are currently living in hotels with no access to catering facilities and are given food, but it's not food of their choice particularly. They come and they use our kitchen facilities, and we act as a host for them to be able to cook together. And I think within a church community, there's been absolutely no resistance to that. There's an understanding, again, of that biblical imperative that we take care of the foreigner in our land. I've not counted up, but maybe you, Pastor, have counted up the number of times in the Old Testament where it says you are to treat the foreigner in your country as if they were like you. And so within the churches, I see great progress in that, in a way that is countercultural to a lot of the political discourse that happens.
Those of you who are just joining us, this is the Methodist Connection. This program is designed for you and with you in mind. If you just join us, I'd like to welcome you to this global engagement from Cheltenham, England. Is Reverend Richel Leather. She is the EDI Officer for the Bristol Methodist Church, or the Bristol Methodist District. Let me follow up to that on the question when it comes to some of the experiences that we have here in the U.S. Recent developments here across the Atlantic have proven that there is an assault on equality, on diversity and inclusion from our current leadership, the current administration. For instance, diversity in the workplace creates friction and uncertainty amongst people, of different backgrounds within the U.S. context. What is it like? What's the British experience for you as a presbyter in Cheltenham and also an EDI officer within the Bristol Methodist District? Talk to us from the church experience, because when you talk about refugees, as you earlier mentioned, these are vulnerable people. And the church ought to be standing up for those who are vulnerable, those who are weak, standing up for the widow, standing up for the oppressed and the marginalized of society.
Yes, I think within a church context, EDI is becoming more embedded, and we want to get away from this being a tick box exercise. We want this to be embedded within church culture, and that requires some structural change, inevitably. And although there has been some resistance to that, so I think some people have talked about EDI being a distraction, and I think that happens outside of the church as well. So some people will say that there are more important aspects of church life when it comes to matters of evangelism, for example. I think my argument against that is always that I see inclusion as being incredibly closely linked with safeguarding. That how can we each flourish unless we remove barriers? How can we allow people to see themselves in the image of God? How can we get them to fulfill the potential that God has given them if they are being denied access to all sorts of aspects of church life? So for me, it is very much about ensuring that those barriers are removed from within this, and I think within a national context, certainly the working people in my churches, they're used to having to deal with aspects of EDI in their working life, whether that's working for our health service or in teaching, and so it is very much becoming more normalized, at the same time as there being this tension within public discourse, because certain aspects of our politics is dragging us to the right, and although I'm not seeing a huge amount of that within a church context, I see that in the media. I have conversations about that on the street. I think partly because people outside the church, I mean, they don't know the difference between a Methodist church and a Baptist church or a Catholic church. I mean, it's completely meaningless to them, and they maybe see us as being this this ancient institution that is no longer relevant. And I see inclusion as being a way in which we have something really valuable to speak of the gospel into our modern culture.
Within the British context, there is a considerable demographic change that is taking place. And I don't think it's only in Britain, it's also taking place here in America. Is religion stay ever-present phenomena within the British context in terms of the considerable weight and influence probably it had some 50 years ago? We want to compare it to the days of the Wesleys, George Whitefield, Charles Wesley, and others. I'm not too sure, but you live within the British context. Talk to us briefly about what is taking place, what we are experiencing within the demographic context, not only here in America, but also in Britain. I'm sure that is taking place. Is the church, the Methodist Church, still an instrument of influence within the cultural context of the United Kingdom?
So I see the Methodist Church as being in a really powerful place. I think sometimes we see the Methodist Church as being one of decline, and we don't name our power. But I do see that we are in a powerful position because we are not the state church. So the Anglican Church is the official religion of the United Kingdom. Whether that actually means anything to public life, I don't know. We like our civic events, but if you have a politician standing up and saying that they're a Christian, that becomes really controversial. But I think with the Methodist Church, we can speak truth to power in a way that a lot of my Anglican colleagues find that more difficult, and therefore I think I think as a church we just need to be braver. We need to speak out whenever we see injustice. And being a Christian is not a popularity contest, is it? And we're to stand alongside those who suffer. I come to this as somebody with great affinity to liberation theology, of God's preferential option for the poor, and therefore I see that it it is so embedded in our discipleship to point out when things are going against the gospel, and I think when it comes to political policies, it's much easier for the Methodist Church to do that than it is for the state church.
Well, on that note, we want to thank you. I'm very conscious of time, and I am so glad that you could join us today from Cheltenham, England. You are also a presbyter within the Bristol Methodist Church. You indicated you have two churches within Cheltenham.
Yeah.
Just to close, I will ask you for closing comments. And it's been a great privilege to have you with us here, Reverend Richel Leather. We're looking forward to a second engagement. We like to have you from time to time. And as I was indicating the last time when we communicated, the hope and prayer is that we can begin to build a bridge. The Methodist Connection is designed to build a bridge between cultures, peoples, nations, because the good news of Christ that is embedded in the Great Commission urges and admonishes all of us to go out into the world. It says to all nations, to all peoples, to all tribes, irrespective of where they come from, to be a part, and the effort to ensure that we can create an inclusive community. The debates will continue. The schisms will continue because it's part of Methodist history. It's part of church history. From generation to generation, there have been theological debates. So they will continue. And we will not think the same way. We will not see things the same way. But if we can come under a tree as the Methodist Connection, like you and I are having now, this is truly remarkable. It's history. And that's what this program is intended for a little boy who grew up on the countryside in West Africa, who engaged missionaries maybe just at the age of 9, who became an interpreter of missionaries in the trenches in the northwestern part of Liberia. And then ensued a war and fled eventually, becomes a refugee in several parts of West Africa, and eventually end up in the United States. And is playing a pivotal role within the Methodist context, within the American context and the global context. And here sits Reverend Richel Leather from Britain, from England. And she has shared her own experiences with us today. There's nothing more demonstrative as this platform and what it brings to the conversation. We like to listen to all, we like to hear from all, and all are welcome to the table, this communion table, as it is within this setting. Reverend Leather, can you give us parting words? And we are hoping to connect with you again soon.
Thank you so much, and maybe I'll look forward to welcoming you when you're next in the Bristol district, and that'd be marvellous. I'm really grateful to you. I think the final thing I wanted to say was, I think in a previous conversation we were talking about, will we ever get to a point where we are fully free and equal? And my answer to that is yes, because we've got to hold on to hope. And I hold on to the words of the previous Pope Francis, where he talked about, first we pray for the hungry to be fed, and then we feed them. That's how prayer works. And so my job is to pray for an equal and inclusive church and society, and then I go out and ensure that happens. So that's what prayer does, doesn't it? So thank you.
Yep, thank you. I want to thank you so much. And by the way, in the backdrop, as I said, is the city of London. And I will visit London again. I have deep interest in Bristol. I have a considerable interest in Oxford. And I have interest in your institutions. I have interest in your people. And that's why it is great, and it's been a great honor to have you with us today. We're going to let you go, and I know that you're a pretty busy person. We will be in communication. I love to hear from Anthony, the scholar you spoke about, and if you can share with me those the contacts in terms of emails and maybe a phone number, I truly will be reaching out. It's been a pleasure having you
Thank you
with
so
us
much.
today.
Thank you. Thank you,
And to
Pastor.
all of you, our viewers, our listeners around the world, not only here in the United States, but around the world, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this interesting edition. This is where we bring pastors, lay preachers, community civic leaders, we bring mothers, we bring victims, we bring all to the table. We'll be back again next time on behalf of the entire team. This is Zeze Wipugipata. Thanking you so much for being with us today. And let's say Godspeed to Reverend Richel Leather. We'll see you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.